Hello, I'm Paula Bolton, co-founder of Lesbian Labour. Welcome to our Proud Lesbian series. During Pride Month, I will be interviewing a wide range of lesbians to gather lesbian perspectives and to hear about lesbian lives in 2022. And for my 16th interview, we're off to Wales to speak to Rose. Hello, Rose.
Hi, Paula. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. So can we kick off with you talking about your life as a lesbian, when you knew, coming out, that sort of early life stuff?
Wow, that's quite a big question in my life as a lesbian. But when I knew, I don't think I've ever not known that I'm a lesbian. I've always known that I loved women, that I was attracted to women, that there was something different about myself at school, before school, and after school. You know, I think before I knew the word lesbian, I just knew I was always attracted to women. I was different, tomboyish, I suppose.
Yeah. Were there many others around you? Were you unusual in that regard?
Well, up until I left school, until about 16 or 17, I thought I was the only lesbian in the world. I didn't call it lesbian because I didn't know. It was only sort of in my, once I got to about 16, 17 that I learned about the word lesbian. But before then, I just knew I loved women, but I felt like alone and pretty much unsupported, and knew that whatever it was that I was not normal. I was not accepted. It wasn't accepted by the church. It wasn't accepted by the community, or by my school, or by my friends, you know. So I think that it was really hard in a way to be a lesbian.
Yeah. And where was it? Where did you grow up, Rose?
I grew up in South Africa, in two places actually, in a little town called Nelspruit in the Eastern Transvaal, the Lowveld, near the Mozambican border, nearby the Kruger National Park. I spent a lot of time in the Kruger National Park with, and then my school was like on the hills of wild hills. It was a wonderful place to go to school. I was in boarding school, a Catholic boarding school, and then I also, you know, every few months, every 3 or 4 months, you'd go home to Johannesburg, where I spent time with my mum.
Okay. So did you actually have a moment when you came out and found a name for what you were and told people around you?
You know, honestly, I can't believe, I mean, I can't remember, sorry. I can't remember an exact time that I came out. But what I do remember is that I don't think I was ever ashamed of who I was and that I was different. You know, I knew I was different, but I think I just accepted the fact that I was different. And I think I just kept doing what I wanted to do, and I think that's created a lot of problems for my family and my school, and you know, growing up in a very religious community. You know, I'm an Afrikaner and my family's Afrikaners, and you know, very religious, so it was really difficult. And but I didn't get a lot of animosity either from my mum or my aunties about that. They knew I was different.
Yeah. So when did you first meet any other lesbians?
I think I was in matric, which was 18, or just before that, sort of from 16, 17, 18 onwards. I started seeing other people being lesbians, and realizing that they, you know, I could see they were trying to hide it, that they loved each other. And I kind of accidentally walked in on them. I was a head girl at school. And I didn't make a fuss of it, and I didn't, so I just walked out and understood, oh, I wasn't the only person around
Yeah.
that was lesbian, but I didn't say anything to them. I just didn't make them feel uncomfortable about it or report them.
Yeah. So did you eventually find your way to any sort of community where being gay or lesbian was accepted?
Well, before I left school, I actually met someone who was out of school and who was a lesbian, and I, you know, my first kind of strong, you know, open lesbian relationship between two people. But it wasn't open in terms of, because she was a Jehovah's Witness and I was, it was difficult. So it wasn't open, but it was open between the two of us, but not open to society or the community she was in. And I suppose that was just, I was still in school, she was out of school. So that was my first kind of meeting of someone. And it was, you know, in school I'd had one or two kind of close calls of meeting people, just kisses and that, but mainly once I'd left school, that's when I kind of really, the women's only spaces were really important to me, because that's where I learned what it was like to be a lesbian, and where I mean, I'm 60 now, well, almost 60. I turned 60 in February, which is 6 months away. But I'm talking about when I was 18, 19, 20, you know, there was these nightclubs called the Dungeon, and there was some women's only spaces and clubs. It was really important because there you could see people were lesbians, you could meet other lesbians, you could talk to other lesbians, you could feel comfortable in those lesbian spaces. And just, I mean, at that time when I left school, I joined the fire department. So it was really, you weren't, you know, it was not okay to be lesbian and open and out. So it was really nice to go after work, when you're knocked off, to go to a lesbian only space and dance and talk and, you know, just really enjoy that feminine energy.
Was there a much of a mixed gay scene in Johannesburg?
Yes, there was actually, and it was strange because I grew up in apartheid in South Africa, but the gay scene wasn't. It was amazing. I mean, it was a mixed gay scene. It was men, women, black and white, you know, Indian, and it was actually quite a. It was an eye opener having grown up in South Africa. It was very forward. You know,
Yeah.
a forward movement.
Yeah, that's interesting, because people often think about the different movements for independence in an order, don't they? And the gay movement comes after civil rights, etc. But that's fascinating that it's almost, you know, back to front in a way in South Africa.
Yes, I know what you mean. It's almost back to front. It was almost, for me, being in the gay community was actually an eye opener to. It exposed me to what apartheid was doing, because I think growing up, separation, it kept us apart, and you didn't understand what people were really suffering, you know, how they were suffering and what they were suffering from. But being in the gay community gave you access to black lesbians and colored lesbians and, you know, black gay people, and we learned from each other. And I remember Zuleka, a friend of mine, during apartheid, I used to go to the townships with her. You know, I used to take my motorbike and go and visit her in the townships, and I'd sleep over at her place. And you know, her mom was wonderful to me. We weren't lovers, we were friends. And you know, her mom would cook for me, and it was really lovely. And she used to take me around the township at night time, but we had to move on because there was also animosity towards white people too. Yeah. And it was dangerous for white people to be in you know, in the township. But you know, she'd take me to a shebeen or a guy that was selling a couple of beers, and then pop me into a movie house there. I remember it was like the 16mm camera with people sitting on chairs and a white screen, and you know, we'd sit at the back, but she wouldn't stay anywhere too long, so that trying to keep me safe.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I used to take her to the white areas, and we used to go playing pool in the clubs, pubs, which allowed gay people into them. And, you know, so it was a way for us to interact and get to know each other, and get to know, you know, how each other's lives were, and how we could help each other and support each other during that time period. And it certainly helped me, you know, formulate my own political career, which I, you know, I was very pro ANC when I left school, and you know, pro equality, pro freedom. But obviously, you know, if you're thinking of my own equality as a gay person, as a lesbian, I needed to see that everybody needed equality, not just myself as a white gay person, but as everybody in South Africa.
Mm. So would it have been the case then that you as a lesbian, and you know, the gay men around you, that there were pubs that were allowing you in, but black people and colored people would not be allowed in?
I don't know. No, I didn't hang out in straight clubs or straight pubs.
Right.
And I only hung out in gay pubs and clubs, and there was everybody. Everybody was welcome, as far as I can remember.
Yeah.
Everybody was welcome.
So when you took your friend with you, it would be gay clubs that you went to? You did?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
I never went to straight. I never felt comfortable in straight clubs or straight pubs. Number one, I didn't feel comfortable or safe. Number one is because being a woman, you're always picked up, and it's unwanted attention, unwanted uncomfortable sexual innuendos and all of that. Number one, so I never felt safe. And number two is that the minute people learned you were gay, then, you know, there was always somebody who found it offensive, and you know, would make the remark that all you needed was to have sex with a man, you know, and that would change you, or, you know, there was some aggression, you know, people want to have a fight with you and things because of you being gay.
yeah. Yeah. So
you know, I mean, actual aggressive fights, fisticuffs kind of things, you know.
Yeah.
To teach you a lesson.
Yeah. Just going back to your working life, you mentioned then about being in the fire service. So that must have been quite rare. Are you a trailblazer there, Rose?
Well, I've been in quite a few male dominated jobs, and yes, I was one of the first 5, I think, intake into the fire services, so we were pretty new. And I know that the South Africans let in women into the fire services in Johannesburg. Well, it's actually Benoni. Benoni was the trailblazer under the leadership of Mr. Cotton Barber. He was an amazing fire chief officer, and he opened his fire department first before anybody, I think, in the whole of South Africa, and certainly before UK did, because I found out later that many people in the UK firemen didn't believe I was a fireman, because they only got firewomen in the, or firemen, in the 1990s, whereas we got, you know, South Africa, we joined in the early 1980s, you know, so I think I joined 1983, 84. So yeah, it was, we were the first, and I was amongst the first of the first, yeah.
So,
and sorry,
I was just going to say, so how did that go? How was that? I mean, was it active recruitment, or did you barge your way in, Rose?
No, I found that they, well, semi. I remember before I joined the fire services, I joined the ambulance services, and I kind of bodged my way into the ambulance services, and they laughed at me when I came for my interview. It was a couple of men standing around with the chief ambulance officer, and they didn't think I could do it. And then they said to me, okay, this was my only criteria of joining the South African Ambulance Services. If I could pick up a stretcher with this other guy with a big guy in it, then of course I could have the job. And they didn't expect me to, because I was a small, short, in those days, little, person. And I picked it up quite easily. I don't know what it was, but it's, some kind of
adrenaline.
Yeah, probably adrenaline. Yeah. I don't know what it was. I just picked it up and put it into the ambulance, and they looked at me, and I know that they kind of went, oops, okay, you got the job. So I got the job, and I was with the ambulance services for a few years. And then I heard that Benoni Fire Department was giving access to women for the first time, and the salary was better than the ambulance service. So I joined that. It was difficult in the beginning because number one is men didn't really, not all men, but some of the men in the fire department didn't want women in the fire department. So it was really difficult because you were trailblazing, and they made comments and stuff like that to try to do so. And then when I was out, I was kind of like, I'm hanging around with going out with gay women, and you got your own flat, and I used to bring a woman home. So it was inevitable that they did find out I was gay, and there were some people who made negative comments towards me, or would take it out on me, because they didn't like it. I know there was this particular fire officer who was really anti me for whatever reasons he had. I don't know, but he gave me a very, very hard time, extremely hard time.
Yeah. Do you have an anecdote or an example of what that looked like?
What the hard time looked like?
Yeah.
Well, like, for instance, taking a piece of equipment off a fire engine before I was about to check it, and then saying that well, I had checked it. What was it? I think I checked it, and then he took it off, and then called me and told me that I hadn't checked it properly and that it was missing. And then I said, no, it was there, but I had no proof, because I remembered seeing it there, but now it was missing, and here's my fire officer doing it, And so he said that was a warning. And then another time he did it to me, and then we had a fire call out, and we left without that piece of equipment. And if it hadn't been for another fire person telling me, reporting that he had seen that fire officer doing that, I think I would have been fired from the fire services. So, it was very
undermining.
Yes.
Really.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how long were you in the fire service then?
Oh, I'm not too sure. Maybe 8 years, 6 years, 8 years. And then I left and joined the commercial diving industry. And probably as the first commercial diver in the Southern Hemisphere, I think. Qualified commercial diver. I joined them because they needed a medic, and I trained up as a commercial diver with them during their courses, and trained up as a hyperbaric medic. And I really enjoyed my time with them. Depth recovery unit in Cape Town. I remember going down to Cape Town to do a first aid training course. I was still belonging to the fire department. And I remember driving down the plateau and seeing Cape Town as the most beautiful place I'd ever seen in the world. And I knew that, I trained the course, went back to Johannesburg, gave up my job, looked for a job in Cape Town, found this job at a commercial diving school as a medical instructor, and became a medic, the first female commercial diver.
So from fire to water. So what's your element?
Yeah, well, I'm an Aquarius, so I'm an air sign.
Oh,
but
so
aquarium is
neither.
also water. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there you go. From there to mountains, I'm thinking. So, yeah.
Well, talking about mountains, while I was in the emergency services, I fell 60 foot, which is 20 meters off a cliff during a simulated rescue exercise. And I miraculously survived, which in a way sort of terminated my career, because it took me a long time to heal and recover from that. And then being in water was easy because you're weightless in water, so it was a much easier job on my legs, because I did break my left leg in a very bad way.
Yeah. So the medical training from the ambulance service stood you in good stead and allowed you to get this other job in the diving unit. Have you used your medical training in any other part of your career?
Oh yeah, right throughout. I mean, I was in the diving industry for quite a few years, and I then went as a commercial diving technician to support the commercial divers on a rig in Mossel Bay, and was the hyperbaric medic there. And then from that, I went to do remote areas medicines and was a medic there. And I've worked for the United Nations for AMIS, African mission in Sudan during the genocide, in South Sudan. I was on the border of Chad and Sudan. So my medical background has given me a lot of space to see and travel the world and see the world, because of being a medic. And I've been able to go to Guatemala, I've been able to go to Brazil, South America, I've been to the polar base. I've worked in the oil rigs. I'm a health and safety officer as well, so both a medic and a safety officer. And I've been able to work in a lot of places because of being a medic.
Yeah. So that must have brought trauma with it, however. I mean, from, ambulance, fire, all of this stuff. Has that been a difficult trajectory there?
Yes, it has been. I have faced a lot of violence right throughout my lifetime. I've seen a lot of violence right throughout my lifetime. Before joining the ambulance services, in the ambulance services, in the fire services, and then obviously working as a medic. And I'm not proud of this part of my life, but also I'm not ashamed of it. But about 7, 8, 9 years ago, I had a little bit of a burnout, a post-traumatic stress disorder, or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
And I did have a very serious flashbacks and a loss of memory and serious depression, and my whole personality and everything changed. And I resorted to drugs, and it's been a struggle. I dropped down right to the bottom of the barrel, and it's been a struggle. And I'm now out of it. I've been out of it now 3 years. And I'm back on my feet. I'm back working as a health and safety officer. Recently got a job as a health and safety manager, and I'm doing really well, back on my feet and going strong. And I feel it made me really understand, because I think before that happened to me, I was really, active, and I think it was very hard for me to understand depression and real being like almost homeless, and just letting go of yourself and letting go of everything in your life, and then also losing your mind in a way, because it goes into a very dark place. PTSD is really, it's a very difficult situation in anybody's life. And I think it humbled me a lot, because it took my my cockiness. Yeah, I would say so, maybe. But your pride in yourself and your faith and belief in yourself, and it knocked it for a six.
Yeah.
And to pick that all up and rebuild it. But fortunately, I've got really amazing friends, and I met somebody during that time period as well, who just, like picked me up and shook me out and really helped me get back there and stood by myself. So yeah, and I must say, had I not been living in Britain, in the UK, the UK has got a very beautiful support system for people with PTSD, which I didn't even realize, but it just got, I just slipped into the system, and it really helped me. I got out of it again, but I'm really grateful to the UK for that time period.
Well, that is really great to hear somebody speak positively about our mental health services, because I'm glad that happened for you, Rose, and that you landed in the right place, because it is a bit of a postcode lottery, I have to say.
Yeah, but I want to say something about the UK hospitals. I have worked in a lot of hospitals, volunteered, and worked in the front line of these hospitals, in South Africa, Guatemala, Africa, a lot of places in Africa, remote, medical areas, remote little clinics, lots of clinics. And oh man, the way that people suffer, and the hospital systems are really struggling, because I was in Guatemala, there wasn't oxygen, there wasn't drugs to give people, and to anesthetize, so you could suture. It was very little drugs or anything in remote areas, and people suffered. And being in the UK I think that the UK has got something really special, and the support they get through the hospital and the mental health services, I think personally, is some of the best place in the world. And I mean, I am truly grateful to have ended up here, and to have experienced that, and I've seen everything else that I've seen.
Well, it's fascinating, because obviously we're all measuring it from what we have known possibly in the past, and the gradual privatization by stealth of the NHS and the running down of it all is something we're all measuring from here. You're measuring it from here, aren't you? It's kind of like, wow, this is amazing compared to what there is elsewhere around the world. So that is good to hear, actually, that we've got a lot to be grateful for.
Yeah, well, with regards to privatization, I don't think that is a route to go at all. I mean, if you look at America and places where things are starting to privatize, it doesn't give access to the common person, and the kind of help that you would need on every level, on your mental health and on your physical health, would not be there. If you weren't somebody who was highly qualified and earned a lot of money, and I think that would make it a very sad country indeed, that doesn't support its people, because medical services is a basic, is a necessity. Being an ex-firefighter and an ex-paramedic, or an ex-medic in the 80s, and today's paramedics, and then in the 1980s paramedics, are a world of difference. It's very much different. There's been massive growth between then and now. But what I was trying to say is, sorry, I lost my thought there. Sorry.
Okay,
I've lost it. I'm sorry. I lost it.
That's all right. Well, you were talking about we were talking about the hospitals, weren't we, and the mental health prices, the cost not being available to people with little money, privatisation not being a good route.
Mm.
It might come back.
Okay, but let's get back to, you know, being a lesbian. Being a lesbian, okay. Being a lesbian, and I remember in the 80s, late 80s, there was this AIDS, you know, the whole AIDS thing, and it was all blamed on the gay community. And it's so wrong, because it wasn't, you know, it's not just the gay community. It happened to be that the gay community were the first people who, I think, who exposed it, and were to talk about it and to say that they were, but it was just rife in Africa among, you know, straight people as well. And it's you know, don't get me talking on where I think it comes from, but still but I think that that was an even, so not only do you have this stigma against being gay, when AIDS came out, there was this massive stigma against, you know, being gay and spreading AIDS, and our rampant
Promiscuity.
sexual, you know, appetite, which is, you know, so wrong. But anyway, yeah. And I remember wanting to have an AIDS test, because we weren't too sure in the 80s how it was spreading, and, you know, it was so, and it was in the gay community, and we were being, you know, the fear mongering amongst it, you know, in our own communities and things like that. And we were also busy learning, so I wanted to have an AIDS test. So I went to a doctor, privatized doctor, and asked for an AIDS test. And then they phoned me, and you know, oh, yes, you could, the way that they dealt with it. Do you want to hear the bad news or the good news first? So I said, oh, you better give me the bad news first. I'd rather want the bad news first. And so, you know, they say, oh, we're only joking. It's like, what the, you don't say that on the phone to somebody. You're a doctor, you know. And it was the nurse who phoned me from the doctor's rooms. Oh, no, you don't have AIDS. You know, it's like they made a joke out of it. And it was something, you know, for us, it was like, I remember one of my very close friends, you know, who died of AIDS, and we were a black guy, and we were really, you know, and you know, a lot of people around me in that time period were dying of AIDS, mainly, you know, straight, I mean, sorry, my gay men friends, male friends. So for a doctor to make a joke like that was totally uncalled for. But I think they were trying to give me a fright because I was gay, trying to, you know, give me a fright.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm interested to know, was there other people in these interviews, other women have talked about how the lesbian community supported the gay men during that time. And
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I found that too.
Yeah.
I found that sorry, Alexa's just started talking on her own.
Okay. My radio does it all the time. I don't know what's going on, and I haven't even got Alexa.
But anyway, she stopped now. Yeah, I found that the lesbians were really strong. What I found is in the fight for equality in South Africa, and the environment. It was a hell of a lot more lesbians in those political, you know, in the forefront of the political movements, you know, political activism movements.
Yes. I just wanted to say, all of those jobs that you've done,
yes,
you know, a lot of them are very adrenaline fueled. I mean, you know, it's crisis, 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 crisis. So there's no surprise that you eventually crash, having had all of those years. But what do you do for your highs now?
now,
yeah,
my highs, I prefer not having highs.
You mentioned your friend earlier on, and you said about going out on a bike. So how much was, you know, motorbikes a part of your life? Are you one of those dykes at all?
Oh, yes. I've been riding motorbikes in South Africa. I rode motorbikes for years and years and years. And, now, a few years ago, I started with my partner. We started riding motorbikes. Not, I wasn't too comfortable with riding in this country because I'm used to riding on big open roads, and it's really, and here it's tiny little windy roads where everybody, especially the white vans, drive like maniacs.
Well, there you go. That's
it rains, it bloody rains all the time. It's like rain, 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 slippy, 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 rain, rain, rain. And it's cold, it's freezing, it's uncomfortable. 9 months a year, you have winter. I can't believe it. I mean, I'm used to having winter for like 2-3 months a year, and that's it in South Africa. But yeah, no, I love ride. You know, the motorbikes, what a motorbike does, I think, it just, it's a freedom, the sense of freedom, and the sense of, yeah, but that's not how I get my adrenaline. I think now, after having, you know, before my PTSD episode time period, I was very much go, 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 dancer, 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 club, 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 you know, work, 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 party, 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 you know, and that kind of person, and you know, travel, travel, and just not afraid of anything. And I think now I'm not afraid of anything still, you know, although fear is healthy in a way, and it's also unhealthy in another way. I'd rather, I like now to settle down, look over the mountains rather than climb it. Look down the mountains and travel. And we've just recently bought a van, which is going to allow us to travel around a bit and see the places. So yeah, no, I prefer not being an adrenaline junkie anymore.
Well, I think the idea of being in Wales on those tiny little windy roads, trying to go anywhere on a motorbike, I think that's sufficient stress and risk for that part of you to continue to be exercised. And it sounds like it's the love of a good woman that's pulled you through as well.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. And you know, I mean, we are totally opposite. It's like we're like chalk and cheese, absolutely. And when I first met her, I remember thinking, well, she's not my type. But, you know, and I told her so. But she was persistent and very loving and very kind and very caring. And I realized that it's not about types. It's about two souls. Yeah. And that's, I want to bring you back now to something about modern day lesbianism and the issues that we face now is I think over the years, I mean, talking about spirituality, I mean, I grew up in a very religious gereformde kerk, jy weet, en jy moet bid en jy weet die Here is alles in jou lewe, and I'm not undermining that at all, and I don't want to, you know, negate people's beliefs at all. And then I went to Catholic boarding school, and it was Catholic, you know, and I remember going early in the morning to chapel to pray, and so much. But anyway, and then moving into Jehovah's Witness and knocking on people's doors, and then getting excommunicated because I was gay, you know, and then searching for something, because I think when you get brought up with a spiritual consciousness, you cannot help but spend your life always searching for something, because you identify with the divinity, you know. And then, you know, interested in Buddhism, but also when you're interested in this divinity, and yet this very divinity rejects you because you're gay, that's really difficult, you know, because it's a sin to be gay. That's really, really difficult, because you feel that you were born like this, and how can you be unnatural when you believe you're natural and that it's normal for you. And it's very difficult to be anything else. I remember trying to be straight, and I remember being with men, and it feeling so unnatural and so not normal, and never being able to love a man the way that you should love a man if you were straight. I've had some really good male friends who I love, absolutely love, but could never love them sexually.
Yeah.
It just couldn't happen. It just, no matter how hard I tried to go straight for. That was my boy. He jumped up. Oh my dog. Hello. Hi there.
Hello there.
Hercules. Look.
Hercules wants to join in.
Sorry, yeah, he jumped up and tickled the.
It's okay.
Is
So
that better? Yeah.
that's fine.
Sorry, I lost my
Self-imposed conversion therapy is what you were talking about there.
Oh yes, self-imposed. That is a beautiful word. And yes, true, self-imposed conversion therapy. And I was with this man that I worked with, and we were partners on the ambulances, the response car. And I really loved him very much as a person, and as a man. He was a beautiful man. He was beautiful in his heart and his soul. And we even got engaged, and we were going to get married. But on a sexual basis, I just couldn't do it. There was no attraction for me, and no satisfaction, and I couldn't even get to doing the act. When we separated, finally, when I said, I just can't do this, I can't get married, I can't do this, because I couldn't think of a lifetime of not enjoying, your partner, because that's what it's about, isn't it? You've got to enjoy your partner sexually and emotionally and physically touching, and I couldn't even enjoy that. I swore to myself that I would never do that again, because the hurt, what I caused this man, whom I loved so dearly as a friend and as a person, and how he hurt so much, I would never do that to somebody else. And I still to this day feel really bad about hurting someone that badly, by being false in a way, not truthful. But it was my way of trying so hard to convert.
That came around because you were saying the situation we find ourselves in nowadays. So
yes, okay, nowadays. But since then, I've sort of delved into a lot with shamanism and ancient Celtic beliefs and all this. And the one thing that really works for me in understanding is the Red American philosophy. They call us gays two-spirited people. The two spirits. So you have the one spirit and the other spirit, and so we're two-spirited people. So we may have a part of us it's more male identified in a female body, or more female identified in a male body. So we're kind of two-spirited people in a way. But it's with the situation today is that I think that society is pushing it, making it too easy for us to do the younger people, not us older people, making it too easy for younger people to excuse me, have the change before you've even learnt about your two spirits. I mean, I know myself is as a youngster and a younger lesbian, all I wanted to do was become a man, as a youngster. Because I was more of a tomboy, and I knew I loved women, and so that's it. And for years, I wasn't very comfortable with my female presentation of my body to society, and I think I would have been more comfortable had I been able to easily access a male body and have one, and then become a man. However, I don't think, even if you had that, I would ever have really been a man, because in my mind, I am a two-spirited person. I have had access to what it is like to be a woman, and being privy to that, you can never become a man. So even if I'd had a sex change, if I'd had it, available to me, I don't think, for me personally, I don't think I would have ever been able to live a life as a man, because now, at nearly 60, I knew that even a few years ago, especially during the PTSD, I think I had support from another gay man, who was, he wasn't considering himself gay. He was a man who wanted to be a woman, and he was truly a woman in his head and in his mind, but he had a man's body, and he is in the process of transitioning now. And when I was with him, he was a good support for me during my PTSD. But I knew the way he was thinking, and now she was thinking, it's totally different to how a woman thinks.
Yeah.
And even if they go through a transition, yeah. So it's not the same.
Yeah.
You are a trans person, and you will always be a trans person. Whether if I trans, I'd always be a trans person. I wouldn't never be a real man, even if I had no boobs, and I had an appendage down there. It would never be a real appendage. I'd never be able to give a woman a child. And I would always have the mind of my feminine self.
Yeah.
My other half, the other spirit. So yeah, I'm having a hard time with, and I'm not against, and don't get me wrong, I'm not against equality for all people, and for all people to do their thing and what's right for them, as long as you're not hurting other people.
Yeah.
And I will support that 100%, individuality and difference and accepting difference. But where women's spaces are being totally encroached on, that is not right. I think women's spaces must maintain women's spaces, and I will keep on supporting that. I will not stand in the way for people to transition, or to be trans, or to be anything they want to be. Adult consensual sex is adult consensual sex, and it's do what you want, as long as you're not hurting someone and it's consensual.
Yeah. But as you mentioned, the crossover and the impact on women's spaces is where the contention is, isn't it? This is
absolutely, and
having fought for so long to make sure that there are safe spaces. You mentioned the PTSD, you mentioned the trauma services. It needs to be possible for women to be in women-only spaces.
Yeah, let me just share something with you that's very deep and very personal. My mother was diagnosed as a schizophrenic for me at a very young age, and she was hospitalized and sent to an institution, and I truly believe that in that institution that she was raped. And I think that safe space for women is just so important. Especially when you're vulnerable, like in prison nowadays, there's these stories of a man who identifies as a woman. It's like, how can if I just identify as a woman in my head, that makes me a woman? That's not true.
No.
If I identify as a man in my head, it doesn't make me a man.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And to put people in a prison, in a woman's prison, who identify as a woman, and put them, and where they're able to rape women in their vulnerable state, that is it's a tragedy, and it's a travesty, and it is so wrong of the government to be doing that. And it upsets me when political parties are not seeing this, or not seeing that this argument, that it is necessary to protect women and women-only spaces, because we are living in a society where rape is prevalent, or
Yeah.
where abuse against women is prevalent.
Yeah.
And until you have a society that isn't, you have to protect the more vulnerable and there's no doubt that, yes, some men are being raped as well. And yes, we need to provide services to protect them and to treat them and to, support them through this. But it doesn't negate the responsibility to keep women's spaces, safe spaces for women.
So just to bring you around then, the politics and activism part of, I mean, some of that's come through in what you've been saying anyway, but the various political parties are in a way at war about this very subject that you're talking about.
Yes.
And who has got it right? There you are, you're living in Wales, you're living in a country that has a Labour administration at the moment, and they are bringing resources into schools which are really ideologically driven, and they're not, they're pushing the gender ideology without reference to the law. It's very worrying. And of course, we're under a Tory government here in England, well, and in the rest of the UK. Where do you sit politically, Rose, in all of this?
Oh, it's very difficult because I was a staunch Labour supporter up until Jeremy Corbyn. And for me, I was a huge supporter of Jeremy Corbyn up until I was always a Labour supporter. And then the way that they ousted him and the way that they dealt with him made me very upset with Labour. And I've left Labour and I haven't come back to Labour yet. But I struggle. I'm wishy-washy at the moment. I must agree that I'm being very wishy-washy at the moment. Having had a lifetime of activism and a lifetime, I'm finding that looking at political parties, South Africa, fought for the ANC, and yes, I understand that parties go, take time, and there's a pendulum and it swings and lessons and all of that. And the older you get, the more you realize that, yes, nobody's perfect. Yeah. But you've got to find something that you can vote for, because it's important to vote. Because if you don't vote, then people who have the money rule the world, and they do anyway. But you've got to try and keep some standard of justice, you've got to fight for equality constantly. And I find that even in the lesbian circles, I mean, how we've fought and we've gained, and then we lose, and then we gain, and then we lose, and then we gain, in the gays as well, and equality and human rights, as we lose and we gain. And it's like for every 3 steps forward, it's 2 steps back, and then it's another 3 steps forward, and then another 2 steps back, and 1 step forward and 1 step back. And it's just like, it's a constant struggle. And I'm not surprised that I'm very respectful of people who can fight, like yourself, Paula. You have fought all your life. I know how you have given up. I mean, I know your history and how you have given up becoming one of the greatest violinists. I'm not kidding you. That I know about your past. One of the greatest violinists ever. To what? To fight against and stand against nuclear, nuclear warfare, nuclear development in our world, which is the most honorable thing. And having walked how many miles all the way to Moscow, for your arguments, and also, Labour and all the stuff that you've done through your music and through the acting and the stuff that you do working in communities and the books you've written. And how difficult it is, and it's exhausting. Well, it's tiring.
Yeah, it is. But I think the other thing is that if you are an activist, it doesn't matter what it is that needs done. Essentially, there's a part of us which requires you to do in order to self-actualize. You can't sit on the sidelines, however, even during your period, I'm really, really grateful to you for having shared that about the PTSD, because in fact, this is now the 16th interview, and this is the first mention of mental health And given the way the attacks on women and lesbians mean that we permanently have poorer mental health, you know, there's the living under this weight of not being accepted constantly does us down, you know. So I mean, it's great that you've brought that up. I'm really glad you did that. But this thing about there will always be a part of you that does that. Well, get on and do it. You know, something needs to be done. And if it falls to us as activists to do it, then we need to get on and do it. And I mean, for me, this project is probably my favorite bit of activism at the moment, because I'm getting to listen to the most amazing, proud lesbians. I mean, it's just wonderful, in depth as well. How often do we get to have proper time to do this? And that's what I love. Zoom. This is wonderful. We couldn't have had this conversation if it wasn't for Zoom. So thank you. Zoom.
That's right. I just want to say one last thing. I know we're coming to the end, but I want to say one last thing. I think as I'm heading towards my 60th year, as I'm heading towards that, I think for the first time, I am really, really comfortable in my feminine body, and comfortable with the fact that I'm a lesbian, that I'm a woman who loves other, you know, a woman.
Yeah.
And that I think I'm starting to be really at peace with myself. And whereas I think before the PTSD, it was a constant, I know that it's not something that's tangible, and it's not something, but the constant pressure on me, and the constant, there was always going to be someone who makes a remark. There was always going to be someone who makes a business decision against you based on your sexuality, you know, and or is unpleasant, or creates an unpleasant situation, or there's some manager who, you know, and it's based on that. I'm not saying it's only based on that, you know, but I'm saying it's
always there. Yeah,
it's always there. And so I can understand, you know, when Black people say it's always there, you know, it's always there. I can understand, you know, when disabled people say it's always there. You know, that's why I think that, yes, it is really important for us to make a stand. And maybe, you know, we can't make a stand on a big global stage like some people, maybe we wished we could. And sometimes in my life, I feel that I've been up front, and then sometimes at the bottom, behind, and up front and behind, and that. And I think even if you make a stand on the smallest level in your own personal life, between two people in your own little community, the ripple effects are unknown.
Yeah.
You know, on that child who watches you, you know, that you will never know the ripple effects. I will never know the ripple effects of my life, during my life, I've had on other people, you know, other lesbians, other gay people, you know, anybody, you know, people of color, people, you know, other abilities. It's and I think that I think as lesbians, we tend not to realize what an impact and how we actually do support each other.
Yes.
You know?
Well, and this is back to the importance of women-only spaces, because when we are lesbians together, we're speaking lesbian. It's a language as much as anything else. And I always say I'm bilingual, because, you know, it's only when you're with other lesbians, we're using the same words, but it's not about words. It's about the rest of it. It's about the
camaraderie, the support, the belonging, okay, I can throw my top off and nobody will give a damn. I can walk around naked, nobody will give a damn. Not that I do that, but I mean,
well, I'm just thinking there, one of the last times I actually saw you would have been in Wales at WIT. So the space is like Women in Tune, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes. You know,
festival
that was a long time ago. Yeah.
Festival spaces where women can be ourselves without the male gaze, without those parameters around us.
You could just be normal with nobody looking at you, nobody making you feel uncomfortable, nobody. You could. Yes. and feel safe.
Absolutely.
You didn't
Yeah.
have to watch what you were wearing, what you,
Yeah.
yeah.
In fact, I can tell you what you were wearing. You had an African print sarong on and big heavy boots because it was muddy, and it was a complete mixture, you know, and it's absolutely who cares? It was the practical thing to be wearing at the time on the way back from the showers, you know. So anyway, it's been lovely to talk to you, Rose. I'm aware of that's our hour. We've used our time. And yeah, I think that we have a fine example of a proud lesbian there. And you will have had a big impact on lots and lots of other young lesbians who've met you and know that what you can see, what you can be. So
yeah. Thank you very much, Paula. Thank you for inviting me to this interview, and I wish you all of the best too.